Good day, Junior Tuckies, and to anybody else who might be tuning in. Welcome to this grade 10 English lesson. Today we are going to do some activities to really solidify our knowledge when it comes to the characteristics of a novel, story, and character development. I am going to be your teacher today. My name is Miss Langtree, and yes, I'm excited to get started. So let's take a look at activity 1. It's asking us to read the following passages and then answer the following questions. So personally, what I've found to be an effective strategy when it comes to reading passages and answering questions is I always quickly read through the questions before I read the passage to help my brain identify important areas of the passage that I need to focus on. So let's read the questions. Number 1, is Bomi the protagonist or antagonist in the story? Give a reason for your answer. Okay, so I must look at Bomi and her role. Number 2, are the other teachers who are discussing Bomi in paragraph 3 flat or round characters? Discuss why you believe that your answer is correct. Okay. Number 3, identify the rising action. Number 4, identify the climax. Number 5, explain the difference between rising action and falling action. And then number 6, who is the antagonist, and give an explanation. So we're looking for the protagonist, we're looking for the antagonist, we're thinking about are the other teachers flat, we're looking for the climax and the rising action. Okay, let's do this. Ever since she was a newborn baby, Bomi has never enjoyed water, mud, or dirt of any kind. Now, at 4 years old, all of the other toddlers are in the sandpit, and little Bomi is calmly painting. She quietly plays with her brushes in the water until they are paint-free. That's not to say that Bomi did not have a fun side. Oh no! Bomi's teacher, Mrs. Hariprasad, notes early on in her journal that Bomi's favorite game is hand police. Bomi would catch people not washing their hands and chase them back to the sink. She makes a siren noise whilst doing this. One boy, Joffrey, finds this to be irritating because he gets caught all the time. All of the other teachers loved Bomi. Her passion and obsessiveness comes from such a good place, one noted. Yes, says another. And is it not a comforting thought that everyone around you has clean hands? The teachers rewarded Bomi with stickers, but Mrs. Hariprasad was unsure of how she felt about Bomi's actions. One day, Bomi was painting in the school gardens when it started to pour with rain. All of the other children ran inside, and many were giggling with glee as they put on their puddle suits. Bomi, however, was crying in the corner. The teacher popped a rain jacket over Bomi's shoulders and told her to come join in on the fun. No, thank you, replied Bomi, who couldn't even face the window. The teacher insisted that she had something to show her. Eventually, Bomi agreed to accompany her teacher, and the other children splashing and playing in the mud. Mrs. Hariprasad took Bomi to where her painting was resting outside. The raindrops had transformed Bomi's painting of a basic still lake into a gushing, remarkable ocean. Bomi stared in awe. The way the paint ran down the page was beautiful to Bomi. Mrs. Hariprasad picked up the painting, smiled, and remarked, "Sometimes you have to roll up your sleeves and get messy in this life in order to create beautiful things. Do not be afraid of thunder or dirt, and learn to splash in the rain and mud." Bomi stared at Mrs. Hariprasad and then at her new favorite painting. She did a small hop on the soggy grass, smiled, and began to laugh. She ran towards her friends and began to let her troubles wash away. Even Joffrey is playing with her. Mrs. Hariprasad wipes a single teardrop from her eye. It's always amazing to learn something new. And that "it" needs an apostrophe at the end there, guys. It is always amazing to learn something new. I do apologize. Okay, so go back to the questions. Try and answer them by yourself, and then I'm going to move on to the memo now. So, question number 1. Is Bommy the protagonist or antagonist in the story? Give a reason for your answer. I hope that you all agree with me in saying that Bommy is the protagonist. Okay, we're following her storyline. She's growing. She's definitely sort of the main character, the hero, who's not perfect, and that's okay. Okay. So the audience is following her narrative. She is imperfect and has a flaw, but is mostly good. Furthermore, Bommy shows evidence of growth when she changes her perspective on mud and dirt. Okay, but the main thing is that we're following her narrative and she's mostly good. Okay, so she's the protagonist. Question number 2. Are the other teachers who are discussing Bommy in paragraph 3 flat or round characters? Discuss why you believe that your answer is correct. You don't get more flat than those teachers because they only existed to support the narrative. We don't know much about them as people. They don't show any evidence of growth or any, layers. So they are flat as pancake. Okay, let's read the answer. The other teachers are flat characters because there is not a lot of depth to them. We do not have a lot of deep insight into the characters' choices and layers of their personality. These flat characters also show no evidence of change or growth. They exist within the story to help the plot make more sense and to support the development of the protagonist. Okay. Any one of those answers would have been sufficient. You don't have to say all of that, but you do have to give a good, well-explained and elaborated on reason for your answer. Question number 3, identify the rising action of the novel. The rising action is when Mrs. Hariprasad notes that Bommy makes her peers wash their hands. So it's, she's thinking, when it begins to rain, okay, it's building up. Bommy is upset, and Mrs. Hariprasad takes Bommy into the rain. Those are the rising actions of the novel. And therefore, identify the climax of the novel. While the climax of the novel is the deciding factor, everything depends on their reaction or their decisions in the climax. So it's when Bommy notices that her picture, which is wet and muddy, has actually become even more beautiful, and she accepts that rain and mud. And, just getting your hands dirty is not necessarily an awful thing. That is the climax. Okay. Number 5, explain the difference between rising action and falling action in a novel. Okay, so you go up the mountain, rising action, you reach the climax, the deciding factor, and then the falling action is tying up all the loose ends and slowly going down the mountain and reaching a conclusion. So, rising action is when all actions are building up to a deciding point. Following from the climax, the falling action reflects the decisions made in a climactic moment. The falling action is gradually tying up all loose ends in the novel and answering all of the questions. So sometimes questions rise like, is Bommy still chasing Joffrey around the playroom? It's nice to hear, that Joffrey's playing with her now and that she is making friends. So that's the sort of thing that we see in the falling action, kind of just reaching a happy conclusion. Number 6, who is the antagonist of this novel? Provide an explanation for your answer. It's not clear, is it? But if anyone is the kind of person who's standing in the way of Bommy's happiness, it would be Joffrey. He's a bit of a barrier to her. He's causing friction, so he would be considered the antagonist. But it wasn't very clear in the story. Okie dokes, and then we have activity 2, very straightforward. If you've studied and you know your stuff, then you should be able to label the structure of the novel quite easily. I suggest that you pause and you try and do this by yourself. Here is the memo for activity 2. Label the diagram depicting the structure of a novel. I really hope that you could do this, guys. And if so, then you are good to go. Right, number 1 is the exposition. You are exposed to the characters, setting, kind of the style, what's it going to look like, right? Then we experience rising action, lots of points in time where we're sort of building up to the climax, which is the top of the mountain, the deciding peak factor. Going down, falling action, loose ends are tied, and we finally reach a resolution. Everyone, says sorry if there's a need to say sorry, and then they dance the night away or something fun like that. So we reach a resolution, everything is resolved and concluded. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you soon.